We now go to the next session, which is titled Writing Transformation. And please welcome on stage Andile Mngxitama of South Africa and Sampie Terreblanche of South Africa. And this discussion will be facilitated by Patrick Bond. A round of applause for them, please.
It's great you're here. We're just a little behind schedule, so we're going to run right along, and I have apologies from Ashwin Desai. I'm just taking his place. You'll see lots more of him tomorrow a couple of times. And my interest here is partly because both of these writers are extraordinary figures and have played in different ways a structural analysis of the racial features of so-called post-apartheid South Africa and the class analytics, the structured economic processes of ongoing repression, no better than Sampie Terreblanche. Very quickly, Sampie, we're going to start with about 3 questions to go through, ranging back, as Sampie does, 300 years. This great book, A History of Inequality, I mean, it's unbelievable, really. 5 figures of sales, 3 reprints. And our own local press here, UKZN Press, is so happy that although they let the next great book last year, Lost in Transformation, lovely title, get away from them, they will be bringing Sampie back with his next book, which is 8 years in the making, and it deals with global inequality, the West and the rest, and Sampie brings in a very profound way, religion and Christianity as part of the problem. So I'm really happy that Sampie is going to be with us, and I'm especially delighted it's a discussion with Andile Mngxitama, who's got Frank Talk tomorrow, the 13th issue of this amazing, spiky and spunky and profoundly intellectual and just so eloquently constructed journal. This particular one is going to be launched at noon at Ike's Books. It's not written by Andile, but his introduction is stunning, and he's had quite a few others that you'll be able to find. All of these for sale from Adam. So thank you all very, very much. So our idea is just about 5 minutes per question and working backwards. Sampie, let's ask, where did this problem of profound inequality and the inability to make a genuine transformation in the society, how far back do you go to tell that story?
Thank you, Patrick. Before I start, I must apologize to this part.
You can look over to me, that's fine. These lights are brutal.
It's not possible for me to look at you. The lights are too sharp for my eyes. I done a similar presentation in East London in October last year, and after 20 minutes I collapsed. I was hypnotized by the light. Now, as you all know, we are living in a very much divided world between the rich West and the impoverished Western world, we did not take Japan into account. If one put the per capita income of the Western world on an index of 100, the per capita income of the Western world was in 2003 only 17. Might now be in the early 20s. Now, what is the reason for this huge inequality, for this social lack of social justice in the world? Now, the main reason of it is Western imperialism. Western imperialism that started with Columbus and da Gama, with the Spanish and the Dutch, etc., that exploited and repressed and destructed the rest of the world. But I think the real damage was done by the British American world. It is on the 11th of April this year, it will be 300 years since the Peace of Utrecht was signed at the end of the Spanish Succession War. From that date till now, 300 years, we are living in a world that is dominated by the British American world. First, Britain that spent unbelievable amounts on defense in the 18th century. Then in the 19th century with the Industrial Revolution, and now the American imperialism. Now this British-American imperialism of the last 300 years was driven by capitalism, by unbridled capitalism that was not controlled by democratic governments, because there was not democratic governments before 1918. And now we experience a de-democratization in the United States. Now, one must understand South Africa's problem of inequality against the background of this global inequality. In 1910s, the Union of South Africa was institutionalized as a system of white political dominance and racial capitalism. And the white capitalist group became so powerful that it perpetuated itself until the 1990s. It was only ended when the United States entered into the situation. And in the negotiations in the beginning of the 90s, when the Americans had the attitude of triumphalism, that the American model has won after the Soviet Union has imploded. And a deal was struck, an elite compromise, as you read in one of your books, was reached. And I now claim it was perhaps not only an elite compromise, it was an elite conspiracy between the United States, between the white capitalist bloc and the ANC elite, mainly the black elite, that they will get a position of elite formation, enough power, enough money to bring about 10, 20% of the population, black population, into an elite, to exonerate the whites of all their apartheid debt, all their ecological debt, and but to neglect, to forget about the lower 50%.
Let's pick that exact moment where 1994 comes, and we get the transition in just a second, because let's still keep the historic in mind, where especially Steve Biko, no better than Andile Mngxitama to give us Steve Biko's memory revived, but let's think about what Biko said about that period Sampie's been describing, Andile. Do you have a different reading of the apartheid era, the state, the nature of capitalism, with the racial framing?
Yeah, thanks, Patrick. Firstly, I need to say that I'm quite pleased to be sharing this platform with two organic intellectuals of South Africa. You know, an organic intellectual in South Africa generally is a black guy who comes to university or gets extra lessons in some discourse of Marxism, and then, you know, we say that brother is an organic intellectual, and normally we invite them and make them leaders of social movements. But I think tonight I want to call these two organic intellectuals as well. You know, trying to move from a black consciousness perspective is difficult, because the claims that we make do not make necessary sense from, you know, the sort of moves that the professor is making. One has to structurally adjust one's discourse to try to have a conversation going in here, and that is some form of violence, because I would not peg the colonial or imperial project in the West in the way that it does. I will actually go to slavery. That's where I will start with this and say it is not just a global imperial force, but it picks specific bodies to create capital. So capital necessarily is white supremacist and affects and was created by a particular relation to black bodies. So let us be clear about this. It is not all the world. It is unequal, and the Polizarian understanding of blocks of capital are competing. No. Here we have a very specific historical trajectory. First is the capturing of black people from this continent to create this evil modernity, which continues in our situation. Of course, under the Afrikaner capital, English capital doesn't make no difference. I think the key question becomes 1994. What do we do with this? Already, black people have been dehumanized, have lost everything, they've been reduced to worse than workers. So 1994 moment, I think for me, there's the contestation I need to enter. What exactly happens here? You have black people who claim to be in the liberation movement, the African National Congress, negotiates a deal with white capital, Afrikaner in English, all of it. And that deal, to some extent, Sampie, you're right to say that it has elements of elite formation, but I think it is a normal neo-colonial settlement. There is nothing special about evil guys sitting in a dark room and coming up with a deal. South Africa becomes part of the normal neo-colony, and neo-colony, as we know, is that the black guys take over from the white guys to basically perpetuate the same system, and therefore they become black colonialists. So therefore the ANC right now is running a white supremacist project. So they are just managers of that project, and they are black colonialists, and you're right to say they do this in protection of white capital primarily, and they themselves form part of the top elite. But I think we must be clear, there's no outmaneuvering of some sort of, what is that thing, these crazy conspiracies? No. It is a political settlement, and it's normal to all the African experience of the post-colony. So the ANC, therefore, in the Fanonian sense, becomes part of the problem. And that problem is the bodyguards of white capital. There's no way we can deal with white capital without dealing with the ANC.
Excellent. Let's keep that question now. What's the ANC been doing? And start to get the international dimension that Sampie's done so well. I mean, this is the point of Lost in Transformation. Fabulous, quick read, but so profound. And also, you see about 100 slides that we thought Sampie might have a chance to show tonight, but it'll be week after next at his honorary doctoral. You get an honorary doctorate from University of Pretoria, and then next week after that, your 80th birthday. So it's going to be a nice period to acquaint the world with this line of argument. Yes, a good round of applause for... I mean, the man he'll turn 70 and put on the accelerator and put a book like this out, which, as I said, for political economy, 5 figures in this country. That's amazing. So we have so much to look forward to when we get your wisdom. What is the answer to the question about the ANC and imperialism? Were they pushed or did they jump?
Yes, before I answer that, when I talk about imperialism, of course, slavery was a very important dimension, and the role of African slaves in building other continents. The Industrial Revolution was not possible without slavery, and slavery was used to produce cheap clothes from Lancashire to be dumped in Asia that destroy the handicraft industry there. So slavery was an important part, and yes, I agree with you, the dehumanization of black people through imperialism over this whole period. Now, what happened here is that the white capitalist sector in South Africa and the powerful Americans succeeded to got the ANC elite to sell out to them. That was what happened. Now we have about 10 million black people, or let me say this, the top 20% in South Africa, that's 10 million people, got 75% of total income. The lower 50% of the population, all black, got less than 8%. Now, that 10 million, 6.3 million of them are black and 3.7 million are white. But you see, what we have is that the ANC elite sell out the lower 50%. They are in a desperate position. Their poverty is undescribable. It is plain misery, and there is no prospect that this situation will improve.
Sampie, you were one of the first Afrikaans-speaking negotiators in the late 80s. You saw the sellout from the other side. Do you want to just tell everyone why you are saying such robust, critical things about this transition? You were, in a sense, were right at the birth of that.
Well, in the end of the 80s, I was part of a group of Afrikaners that start clandestine meetings with the ANC of Thabo Mbeki, Zuma, Aziz Bahat and others. But we couldn't go on with apartheid. Apartheid was an ugly system, was exploiting the whole black situation. Now we have a black government that is very inefficient, that is very corrupt, and it's also undemocratic in its own approach. We have it in this proportional system. There is no democratic control of what nature. We have one system of repression, and we've got in its place another system of repression with black capitalists now in control.
And Andile, anything you want to add to distinguish the way you'd see this process? Overdetermined by the international balance of forces? Anything that strikes you as different from?
I think that's, we need to have a conversation about how the ANC sells out. I mean, the idea that the ANC sells out. And I know, Professor Terreblanche sometimes argues that it was outmaneuvered by the, say, white bloc. It seems to me that a more useful attempt would be to say, if you think about the colonial project and how early education, forming of the black as the modern subject, created desires of inclusion, is part of, I think, the explanation of what happens here. So this black elite, first black people educated in the European sense and in our desires and so on, we always wanted to be included. So when negotiations happen, it is not so much that we are outmaneuvered, but that layer that always wanted inclusion. And the African National Congress project was always about inclusion. Was never about, and I think Nelson Mandela is very clear about, it is not about disarticulating or destroying white civilization, but it is how we bring in black people through a democratic process. So I'm not sure here that the ANC has done something that it was not designed from the beginning to do. It was always going to end up here.
You read Fanon with that in mind, that this is a common process across the continent?
Yeah, absolutely. In some places it's more complex than ours. I think ours was 1912, if you think about it. The ANC is formed by already a black elite, already created in as sort of Western European subjects. And so their issue really is this. White guys, how do you exclude us? We are most slightly civilized than the rest of these other guys. This is the proposition.
Yes, I'm quite surprised. In that inequality book, I discussed the whole issue. Why was the ANC leaders till 1950 so peaceful? It was because of all of them were at missionary schools. The first revolutionary person that arrived on the scene was Mr. Mandela in 1944 when he got permission to start the Youth League. And in 1949, that Youth League published a document and said, we are not going to stay peaceful. If necessary, we will use violence. And so it's part of the religious education, and it is quite in order for you to be included. But now to turn your back on 50% at least of the African population seems to me a betrayal.
Okay. But I think we cannot moralize class formation, desire, accumulation, and so on. I'm thinking about Achebe now. In that book of his great book, Things Fall Apart. There's this character Okonko. Those of us who read very carefully, and here is the point that even with this project of inclusion into Western modernity, you find black people who are resisting inclusion. Okay, and of course, I mean, up to now, our universities are unable to speak for Amakaba, right? Like those who refuse Western modernity. But Okonkwo, and for me, here's the point. Okonkwo is defeated from beginning. He has no possibility of a victory, because a victory for Okonkwo would mean necessarily such amount of destruction and violence against the white settlers, white usurpers, that do not make sense. So when we get educated in the way that we just described, we begin to articulate our political projects in a sense that makes sense to the world, the white world. The world that, in fact, if we were Okonkwo's children, we would have known that is a world we must interface with this impossible violence. So Nelson Mandela and his friends, by the way, Nelson is very interesting on the gun thing. Let me just make one point. You know Nelson Mandela was arrested there amongst white people, right? Or he was hiding there amongst white people. You know Nelson, a guy traveled from, I think, Ethiopia with a gun. This brother gave Nelson this gun so that Nelson Mandela can continue the fight. Do you know what Nelson did with that gun? He buried it 1.5 meters deep, and now white people are digging up out of that northern suburb of Johannesburg trying to find Nelson's gun. How do you bury your gun so deep in the middle of a war? So you are never actually going to make any battle, precisely because you are already a Western subject. But I know there's some sense of oversimplification. I do think that perhaps, at best we must say, once the ANC accepted advice from the white left, articulating this project as democracy, one person, one vote, it meant the demands of black people could not make sense, were never going to be taken seriously.
Okay, maybe I can just shift a little bit since we need to get the audience in, but it's really first to say Chinua Achebe's death today is something we all mourn, I'm sure. The second contemporary thing is called BRICS, and that's this coming week here in Durban, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. And my question to you both, has the world changed a bit? There is a lot more anti-imperialist rhetoric from our ruling party and its partners. Is there a new tendency with these 5 countries to challenge the declining US and Europe? Do they now, as a result, necessarily talk left so they can walk right and become better deputy sheriffs in this whole imperialist game?
Say one thing, that he thought that I am moralizing because the 50% are trade. Now, what kind of morality is this, that the Western, to be included in the Western world is the highest good? What? I can't see the argument. The Western world is not an example of goodness. The Western world was bastards. They kill and exploit the rest of the world. Why now put it on the table as the good thing in which some of the blacks want to be included?
We agree, Prof. But you must come with me to the next level, you see. My next level is... No, I can't go there. You must come here, you see.
Not at all.
The next level is this, and you can't hear this. The resolution of this problem does not depend on a democratic dialogue. It depends on, as I keep on saying, the total destruction of white civilization. And that would mean you have no right, in fact, as a white person, to claim anything in this country, perhaps in the world. Now, are you going to come with me to this point? Because your privileges, your education, everything that you have depends precisely on the ongoing systemic violence against black people. This is the only point I'm making. I agree we must do this to the 10% black people who sell us out to the white project. But the white project is the problem.
Yes,
we must destroy the white project.
Yes, but I have put no argument on the table that the whites can stay in their position of wealth and privilege. The white people have to make huge sacrifices.
What are those?
Sacrifices.
Wealth tax, you were the first to suggest that the TRC...
Wealth tax? Is this the sacrifice?
I proposed the wealth tax before the TRC.
We want everything, Prof. We want everything. We don't want you to keep your wealth and then you get a little bit of taxation. We want everything. This is the impossible conversation we can have.
The real problem is, who are that we that you are talking about?
Myself? Yeah, me.
You see, if it is only that small elite group,
and any other black person who's interested in the historical redress. Myself, I want reparation. And any other black person who wants that reparation is as entitled to that reparation.
Well, then you will be in the end as bad as the whites have been.
We have an absolutely wonderful race class.
You see, Biko was very clear. You know what? Let me tell you some other example.
And are we going to move?
I need land. Yeah, but I need this land not because I have a right over this land, all of it, not for agricultural reproduction reasons. No, because it belongs to us. Even if every morning I wake up and just look at it, that's my land. It is not for you. It is not for you to lecture me about, oh, what you're going to do with the land. You're going to be bad like everyone else. Black people are very bad people. Ourselves we are. We will settle our problems amongst ourselves, but let's get the historical question resolved between us first. You see?
Last point from Sampie. Then
us and we is only at best 10% of the blacks.
You speak for how many black percentage of the blacks?
But if you said the black elite will take it for them, and that is not acceptable.
You speak for the majority black people.
I am concerned about the majority of the black people.
And I am not concerned about the majority of black people because I'm a black elite.
It seems to me you can't care a damn about this lower 50%.
Okay, shaking hands, that means we can move to the next level, which is
on BRICS.
Okay,
on BRICS.
The answer to my question about BRICS, and then we go to the crowd.
Well, I'm surprised that South Africa joined BRICS. There is a possibility that there can be a clash between the American-led empire and BRICS. And if, especially over resources in Africa, and if that clash takes place, well, South Africa is now completely included as part of the American empire. And if that clash took place, the United States are going to make mincemeat of South Africa. It is a dangerous kind of thing to join up with a group that can clash with the United States. I'm not an admirer of the United States, but I realize how powerful and how reckless they are. And they can broke us.
And Andile, if there's an 1885 precedent for reorganizing foreign investment in Africa, 1885 in Berlin was the carve-up, the scramble for Africa. Is this Durban 2013 the next version of that?
That's quite interesting that there was a long depression in Europe from 1873 till 1896. In the midst of that depression, that high imperialism was organized. Other countries, in an attempt to pacify it, Bismarck was first not for colonialism in Africa, and then he was convinced. And he called the Berlin Conference in 1885. And in the end, Africa was destroyed, and this rivalry, inter-empire rivalry, became so intense that it caused the First World War, the Great Depression, the Second World War. Now we are again in a recession. And now, is this Durban Conference a replay of the Berlin Conference? That is quite an interesting question.
Do you have a racial-centric spin on this?
I'm totally, I'm not interested in the BRICS project, whether it's BRICS from above or BRICS from below. Because I don't see how, in how the world is organized. I'm including this example, if America were to attack, America will not attack South Africa. We are a client state, you know. I mean, when they attack Gaddafi, whatever you think of Gaddafi, we provided the moral support for that attack. South Africa is already available. I don't know why Americans will do anything like this against their other state, which is located in the south of the African continent, okay, which is us. But I would take a different move and try to imagine what would it take to go against this grain. And not maybe, shouldn't we look at Latin America and the example set by people like Chavez and his friends, Evo Morales and Correa and so on in Ecuador, where they take a very active political stance against Western imperialism, against neoliberalism, and try to use the state as an instrument of change. This idea that somehow BRICS, the way it's organized, can change or hold imperialism, it is a failure to realize that the new imperialism in the 21st century is driven by China. You see, in fact, the Americans know this. So when you're part of that sort of thing, of course, it means that already you're part of the new imperialism as well. I'm interested in what state projects, supported by people, of course, can withhold this orthodoxy of capital accumulation and, of course, distribution. Zimbabwe, in my view, in our immediate situation, present a very interesting possibility. Because when I think about it, is that imperialism have done what they could possibly do to bring down the Zimbabwean state. After, of course, they took land from white people, there was this massive economic attack on that nation. And they withstood it. And now we can see there's some sort of development. But the problem in Zimbabwe is it is not sufficiently anti-capitalist to provide a pole for us in Africa to imagine a project against imperialism.
Thanks, Andile.
I want to react to it. It's not the question that America is going to attack us. America is an invisible empire. It will crash us.
It'll loot us, yes. Okay, let us ask you in the crowd to give us very, very tight questions and comments. Is that fine? And on your way out, you can pick up a brochure about BRICS from Below, which is at Wentworth, the Settlers Primary tomorrow, and also all over the city with reality tours on Sunday, and then Monday, Tuesday at Diaconia, the church group. And we have the most amazing speakers from all around the world, and Occupy BRICS outside the Hilton Hotel at the ICC on Wednesday at noon when the leaders drive in and out in their blue light brigades. So who's got the microphone? Here we are. Do we have a microphone? That's okay, great. I'm having trouble seeing, but let's start up here. Right. Tell us your name quickly, and then what's your point in the question?
My name is Lakim Kiza. The question is to both gentlemen on the panel, is what do you suggest or how do you challenge the white project? How do you constructively fight it without resorting to violence?
Great. Let's take a couple more. We just collect a few, if that's okay. The next one is over on this side here. Have we got a speaker? Your name?
Yes. My name is Pezu, and my question is directed to Prof. I spoke to him outside, and I was asking him about the minerals energy complex. He in the Lost in Transition, he talks about the minerals energy complex, and he says it was very instrumental in the co-option of ANC, but most importantly in the creation of or in the elites formation. I want to know, Prof, that is this complex still as strong as it was as from when they were co-opting and when they were negotiating the political settlement? Is it still there? Is it still in charge of these elites? Should we be concerned about it?
question? Is there a microphone next to this person here? Yeah, please tell us your name.
Zweli. It's directed at Andile. It's a situation where if, as a mixed race person, half European and half African, what kind of remuneration would you suggest for someone of mixed race descendants?
Yeah,
And I'd kind of expand on that because I don't quite understand it if I'm that mixed race person.
we want another round, so let's be very tight with the first Andile and then Sampie.
That brother there says he wants to fight white supremacy, but he doesn't want violence. So you want the fight, but you don't want the fight. Want the fight without the fight. So I mean, there's no. So you don't want to end white supremacy. We have to bring to this battle everything. You can't discount a priori other possibilities. I mean, so there are some black people maybe who don't want to end this thing. So we ask the question: you must end white supremacy, but do it with a way in which it does not affect white supremacy. It's a war. You gotta have to understand that. This is a battle. We are the children of Okongo. We must think about Mau Mau. We must think about Poko. All of that, even if today is seen as terrorism, because to be seen as terrorism, it is part of the tradition of liberation that I believe we need to reclaim. But you want the tradition of Nelson Mandela and Desmond Tutu of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, you will end up with this situation. So my brother, if you want war, let's do war. If you want this situation to continue this way, let's not raise these questions. Now that sister asked the question about she's mixed race. You know, this idea of mixed race is very strange. And it is not our creation. White people serve the rule they call the one drop of blood. They see you as black, and we accept you as black. But if you have...
Who's they? Is it them as a nation or them as an immediate family?
It is incumbent upon us to really, really study the history of the encounter between the black and the white. The idea of any black person with some sort, any person with some black blood, black blood, as black, it is not our creation. When they enslaved us...
That is conceived as being black.
Say that again?
Pre-94, that was legally conceived as being a black person if you had some black blood in you. No.
But I accept it now. I don't know what is your problem.
I'm asking you whether that is your idea. Is that your conception?
My conception of black is a black consciousness conception. All the people who were historically oppressed, so-called colored, so-called Indians and Africans, we are all black. But of course, I know so-called Indians and so-called colored have the option of not wanting to be black. I don't have that option.
No, you don't. You are proud of that.
A word from Sampie, and we want one more round of questions.
I do not understand the first question.
Your strategy.
Yes, you can't fight without violence.
I think we have two.
On the military...
The minerals and energy complex. Let me see.
Actually, it would have been more correct to talk about a mineral, energy, and financial complex. Now, the mineral part of that complex is perhaps not as strong as it was before 1994. But the financial part of it, because it has been got integrated with the American financial power, is still very, very strong. Look at our banks, look at other financial institutions. They have contacts worldwide. Barclays have been taken over, what was it?
ABSA. Barclays took ABSA.
Took over upside. So that the M C has become globalized, and it has become a different kind of complex than before the South African economy became globalized.
Okay, very last question, I think. And so help me out in the... who's got the mic near a question? Okay, this is the last one. We have to stop at 10.
Okay.
Your name?
Chris. One for Prof and then one for Andile. First, Prof. Economic models are sold on a philosophical idea. So capitalism with democracy, communism with equality. Now, there was a Time article that talked about the death of capitalism because it cannot naturally adapt as it should. Yet nobody wants communism with its apparent faults for equality. Do you think socialism will rise? And then for Andile, as far as breaking away, creating a new Afrocentric mindset, we see a lot of Africans or upper class Africans moving toward the African American model. Yet that is apparently very hedonistic, and then obviously even though it creates wealth, it also creates a disparaging between the upper class and the lower class, because even though you have all these rich black people, they gain their wealth from this lower class. Oh, did I ask my question? Sorry. To you. So do you think we should be, Africans should be seeking a clearly different identity, or that should they be going toward this American identity?
Are you asking me?
No, Andile about the African identity, and then you about...
You, Sampie, are you a socialist? Are you a card-carrying socialist? Let's start with Sampie, and then we have 2 minutes each. Sorry.
I am for a truly democratic capitalist system. And that kind of system was only in place in the Western world in the third quarter of the 20th century, when there was a social democratic consensus between Europe and the United States. The rest of the period of imperialism from 1500 till today, all this, the capitalist systems were unbridled capitalism. And therefore, the capitalist system was like wild horses running all over the world and destroying things and not being controlled by a truly democratic government. Only after the First and the Second World War, after the misery of the Depression, and in the shadow of the Soviet Union, the Western world agreed that capitalism will be controlled by a democratic system. But it only lasted for 25 years. And then Thatcher and Reagan broke away. And what we have experienced the last 30 years is a de-democratization of the so-called democratic system in the Western world.
Okay, thanks. And before Andile answers, this is really the most eloquent social democrat in this country, I think. Maybe a round of applause for Sampie Terreblanche. Andile, demolish that idea, please.
Social democracy is basically fascism with a human face. I mean, ultimately, it comes to the same. It is not, the whole Scandinavian project was not so much a compromise between America and Europe. It was an attempt to check, in fact, the communist possibility. I think that capitalism cannot be democratic. It cannot be and capitalism cannot be controlled. It must be destroyed. For real democracy to emerge, we have to rethink this project. And Europe today is imploding. The lie of capitalism as democratic, again and again it is shown, and again it's been demonstrated, but it has become a religion and an orthodoxy that certain people hold on to when there is no evidence anymore to sustain it. So this is an ideological proposition. I hope the crisis deepens. I hope the crisis deepens. So that, again, just like Lenin had understood what war can do, we actually reimagine new societies where this sort of thinking that an elite, that it can own huge chunks of wealth and give us a little bit, and we have elections occasionally where we elect guys who will maintain the same evil system going, can come to an end. I don't believe we can anymore run this project as we have run in the past, now 8 years or so. Capitalism, literally, I believe, it has now reached out to become fascism. In South Africa, workers, we shoot them. You know, Americana, what was that? It was just at this point a dramatization of what happens every day on the shop floor. Workers can no longer demand and desire a wage. We need, I think, at least I'm talking about those of us who are socialists, to completely reject the idea that capitalism can be rescued, can be controlled, can be disciplined. But we need to think about new forms of production, of distribution, which are more based on centralizing the goodness of people. I think this is what we must do. It is hard because we can't imagine that world. But this is the labor of people who want to change the world, because capitalism right now is just taking from us, and I don't think we can democratize it.
Yes, no, I agree with that.
Okay, then we have to applaud, and this is 45 minutes of tremendous vigor.
Capitalism and democracy can't be married with each other.
Okay, fantastic way to continue debate in the hall, and do buy the books from Adams. I misspoke, it's 11 o'clock tomorrow, where Fools of Millville by Andile, and a beautiful new book, and also
tomorrow at Ike's Books.
11 o'clock. 11. We have 11, and there's plenty of other things. Please check and do buy these books at Adams, and do keep coming back. Thank you so much to everybody for being with us.